questions. Like one, for example, which I didn't touch on the coast. Why do we have everybody buried here on April the 15th? We know the Titanic hit the iceberg at 11:30 on April the 14th. I have no idea who died before midnight, who died after. So for simplicity, we have everybody dying on April the 15th. Another question they ask here, why are there so few women and children buried here? We know the unknown child and Alma's 3 other children, that's it. Because the important children, first class, were all rescued, right? And at 13, 14, I was a man, so I went to the bottom. And the third class we didn't bring into Halifax. They were buried at sea. So I think we have 4 women buried here, Alma and 3 others. They talk about the unknown child. They talk about Bruce Ismay. Now, Bruce Ismay was the CEO for the White Star Line. And the order was women and children first, right? That's who got in the lifeboats. Now, I'm not saying Bruce Ismay was the second person in a lifeboat. He was probably number 3. So when the world realized this after the inquiry, he was scorned. He became a recluse. So 2 folks are buried here. One his valet and the other his secretary. And they have large stones. And Bruce Ismay paid extra money so they would have these larger stones. And at the base, you're going to see erected by Bruce Ismay. So he really didn't learn. He was still full of himself. So here today, 2010, he wants you to know who paid for those stones, right? And I don't get emotional that often, because like I say, my wife tells me I have a hard heart. But last summer I was here. It was actually October, and I'll show you the stone and the message that's left. And I had 2 men and their wives. These men would be in their early 70s. And their grandfather from Southampton, England, is buried here. And this was the first time they were here in Halifax. So they wrote a note, and it's just basically saying your 2 grandsons, and they give their name, have come all the way from Southampton to see you at your final resting place. And they had that laminized, so that was taped to the stone, and it survived the winter. So you'll be able to see that. And then again this spring, an Italian ship was in, and they did a placing there, another family. Because with Ancestors in the Attic and all those shows, all our kids want to know, where did I come from, right? What are my roots? So people are searching and researching and finding out, and then they realize, like these 2 men, our grandfather is buried here in Halifax. Yeah. So we'll move on. Because I was swimming yesterday, and I hit my toe on a rock, and I broke So this is the section where we have the victims from the Titanic that were brought in. And remember, many Americans took their loved ones home to New York and Boston and Philadelphia. So we have one first-class male buried here, and I'll show you his stone. The rest are mostly crew, because the crew, all went down with the ship. So back in 1912, you can see all the stones are basically identical. Okay? They were just placed on the soil. That's it. And over the years, because of neglect, they knocked over the frost, the heaving. So this area was a mess. So after the movie came out, Titanic, we came in, we spent some money, and this is what we came up with. We poured the 3 columns of concrete. So when you stand here and we look up, what does this remind you of? That's right, the bow of the ship. So I think that's very representative. So I'm not going to tell you about all these stones because I personally don't know everything about them. I'm not a Titanic nut, as some folks are. But you see, every stone is numbered. We'll look at Mr. Gaddy. He was 313, but see, he's buried next to number 32. As we identified, we buried. There's no consistency, there's no order, no rhyme or reason, right? As we identified, we buried. Now, Lucy Gaddy, he was the maitre d' in the first-class dining hall, and the third-class passengers paid their ticket and they were fed, right? They were not starved, they were not slaves. But in the evening, after the meals were over, there'd be a lot of food still left, so he would send all that first-class food downstairs to the third class, and they loved it, okay? There's another story I know about a young boy by the name of Chiquetto. He was Italian, and he played in the band on the Titanic, 17 years of age. Now, the band was contracted out. It had nothing to do with the White Star Line. He's a 17-year-old male. Where did he go? Okay? His family are in London, England. 5 months after the Titanic sank, they get a letter. Will you please return your son's uniform or pay the £5? Now, where's the uniform? Down below. Up here we have the stone for Mr. Dawson. So this is Jack Dawson, the character Leonardo played, and he was body 227 to come out. Now, before we made the movie, I told you today that James Cameron came to Halifax, right? But he did not come out here to the cemetery. He had no idea Jack Dawson was buried here in our cemetery. Now, the Jack Dawson who was resting here was born in Belfast, and he was a stoker on the Titanic. He shoveled the coal along about another 100 men to keep it balanced. If not, she would flip and sink, right? So that's who the Jack Dawson was. Here is the stone I was telling you about earlier. The 2 boys came over, I shouldn't say boys, the 2 men came from Southampton. And their father was Ackerman. And they say 2 of your grandsons from Southampton, England, Alan and Malcolm, along with their wife, were humbled and glad to have at last been able to visit your resting place, October the 2nd, 2009. To say those men were not emotional, okay, just forget it. And this is the Italian that this was done this spring. Then you see Mr. Freeman, okay? And in the bottom you see erected by Bruce Ismay. Larger stone, he paid for that. I think this stone with Mr. Elliot sums everything up. As you read the bottom inscription, it said, each man stood at his post while all the weaker ones went by and showed once more to the world how an Englishman should die. The men went to the bottom with the ship, right? Bruce Ismay, he didn't. He jumped in the first lifeboat he could get. And if you saw the movie The Night to Remember, they say he was the man who got dressed up in women's clothing.
Are these the original stones?
Yes. Yeah.